Good afternoon, Mr. Marc Lustig. We've got here from Canada Royalty. Marc, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Braden.
So, taking the time out of your day from sunny Vancouver, I take it. Are you at home or you're on the road?
I'm at home.
You're at
I'm at
home.
home today.
Fantastic. And you even
It's a sunny.
relocated as well for this company, so it's worth
That's right.
noting you moved the whole family. So, very cool stuff. CanadaRoyalty.com, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, trades publicly on the CSE as ticker CRZ. Also OTCQB, which is now DTC eligible, CNNRF. Again, really appreciate you being here with us today. It's a very talked about company, to say the least. It's you came out kind of quietly earlier this year, late last year. Already, I'm going through the deck. You've got 7 actual very incredible royalty agreements in place already. 12 equity investments, if I'm not mistaken. 4 separate licensing deals. You've got 2 convertible debenture deals. So a lot's happened in a very short period of time. So maybe a little bit. Who's Marc? Who's the man behind the scene, and a little bit about how the company started, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thanks, Braden. That was a pretty good summary. My background is both pharmaceuticals and capital markets. I really got into cannabis in 2014 while I was the head of one of the non-bank investment dealers in Canada. Obviously, that was a time that the Canadian legislation was passed for medical cannabis. And I went full tilt into it. I mean, the way that I look at the cannabis market is very simply that on the one hand, you've got a product that could compete very handily with both alcohol and tobacco for recreational products. But over and above that, and very exciting to me personally, is the fact that you've got a product that has never had proper research done for it.
Yeah.
And the upside that can come from the therapeutic benefits of cannabis is unlimited. And we're only really at the first inning of finding out all about that. And so my background of both science and business, pharmaceuticals, and specifically capital markets in life sciences was a very good backdrop to founding Cannabis Royalties and Holdings Corp., which was the private company that was launched in 2014. And the idea behind it really simply is that it's not a Canadian licensed producer. And a lot of the investors would be very familiar with a lot of the great licensed producer models, except I just found that there was an opportunity to have a different type of model, which is to give an investor access to a more diverse platform of assets within the cannabis sector, specifically around IP and research and brands and products, in a whole array of different geographies, not just the Canadian medical cannabis sector. And so that was the impetus for founding Canada Royalty. It's grown very quickly, and in 2.5 years, as you point out, we have more than 20 different investments. We've raised coming on about $45 million so far. We have about $15 million in cash at the moment. And we're looking at anywhere from 6 to 10 new deals to add to that will be completed sometime in 2017 is my guess. So it's a very exciting model, and keeps obviously our group very busy, because getting that many deals done is no small feat. But the nice part is that as we've completed more deals, we've had more opportunities to look at even more deals. And so it's nonstop, obviously, and very very exciting.
Very cool. And that's, I think, what I like the most is not only is it a highly scalable model, it's something that you can continue to grow out and improve up and really scale. But you guys have, I hate to use the term big boy, but you and your team, you kind of waited and looked at the landscape and said, do we want to be subject to the ebbs and flows of cultivation and to regulation like Health Canada, or do we want to get right down and look at the IP and brands? And I've often used the analogy of, this is prohibition all over again. And in 1933, did you want to be a moonshiner in the backcountry, or did you want to be a part of Seagram's and Crown Royal? And those brands are multi-billion-dollar multinational brands to this day, right? So very neat that you guys saw that. So just break down for me a little bit. It's kind of 3 main components to your business. You've got sort of a research component, the CR brands, which is a really impressive roster of companies, and then sort of the infrastructure play. So maybe touch on Anandia first and kind of go from there, because that, for those that don't know, is by far the leader, led by Dr. Page here in Western Canada. Very exciting company, which you now own 20% of, if I'm not mistaken.
It's correct. Yeah. So Anandia would be the best example of a research-oriented asset for us. I mean, maybe even taking a step back, even just the summary of those three categories uh, really gives an emphasis for what Canada Royalty is looking to do. I mean, there are great Canadian licensed producer companies out there, and there are going to be a bunch of winners, and there will be some losers. But our company, at least for the Canadian market, uh, really is there to offer a number of ancillary assets that any one Canadian licensed producer is going to need, almost like a picks and shovels type of approach. And so, um, if I highlighted our most attractive research-oriented asset, it would be Anandia. As you point out, it's based in Vancouver. It's founded by two gentlemen, John Page and John Coleman. They're both geneticists, but I think that the three assets that are attractive about Anandia, first of all, their genetics. I'm not aware of another company in Canada that would have a genetics library like Anandia does. Also, and very topical at the moment, is their ability to analyze and do testing. And so everyone who's going to watch this would be well aware that
it's a lot of headlines right now. Yeah, to put it lightly.
Contamination and pesticides in cannabis products is a very important and crucial issue to be resolved. And so Anandia has the only lab that's exclusively dedicated towards the testing and analytics of cannabis. And then thirdly, and probably most valuable in our opinion, and what we're working towards now expanding, is the dealer's license that Anandia has. And this is a license that allows Anandia to do extraction and derivative processing, and then wholesale that back to LPs or export that.
Right.
And so to me personally, because of how Canada Royalty looks at the market, which is that it will be driven by extracts and derivatives, we wanted to have a Canadian vehicle that could, in its own right, be a leader in the area of extraction and exportation of extracts.
Wow. And what a crew to climb aboard with. That's absolutely incredible with Dr. Jonathan Page over there. I'll just mention Afria because they also made a pretty significant investment in you guys, and even while you were private, if I'm not mistaken, as well as an exclusivity you've got with them on the Canadian market as well. So maybe touch a little bit on Afria.
Sure. So, if you think about what we've put together, and this comes back to CR Brands, which I'm sure we'll touch on. I think that Canada Royalty to a Canadian licensed producer would have a lot of different assets which are strategically valuable for the Canadian market. And I think that that's how Afria looked at our company. And you're right, they made multiple investments in us as a private company, in fact, as a public company as well. They participated on our RTO financing in December, which was done at $2 a share. But all of that led to the place that we ended up getting to with Afria, which was that we did a royalty transaction. I mean, that is really what we're looking to do with our partners. And so that royalty transaction says that that for products that Canada Royalty owns wholly or is able to license out or distribute, Afria has the rights to do that for the Canadian market.
Right.
And if they do that for any of those products, then we get paid a 5% gross sales royalty, which is a significant number, especially when you start talking about things like the cartridge market, which happens to be my favorite part of the market and where I think that the leadership in the cannabis market will come from. It turns out to be a pretty significant slice if Afria decides to license some of our products.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, talk about a best of breed team on the Canadian cultivation side to be partnered with. So congratulations there. Resolve, just one last point I wanted to bring up. Resolve Digital, I had the pleasure of meeting the principal of that company, and I wanted to just sort of touch on a proof of concept or proof of your ability to find early stage assets, accretive businesses in this space, and they just did a raise, if I'm not mistaken, sort of really reinforcing your position there. So maybe touch a bit on what they're up to, and again, just your business model as it relates to that transaction.
Sure. So if an investor looked at our business model, they would see uh, currently 5 different structures as to how they end up making money. Royalties we already spoke about, and there are a number of those. We also have acquired outright companies like Dreamcatcher Labs and Electric Media Land, which are ultimately generating products for us. So that would be another type of asset. We have a number of investments that are less than 50% ownership, and some of those are equity. And in the case of Resolve, we owned 35% of that company. We made the investment, as you point out, at an early stage. And that was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Resolve is a company that's focused on a medical device vaporizer. And most impressive about the Breeze, which is the name of their product, is the software-hardware interaction. So the app that is the Breeze app is able to pick up metrics on a vaporizer that I've not seen before in the market. So it's really the first time that a patient will be able to sit down with a physician and actually have an educated
true analytics of what they're consuming and dose.
That's right. So it's really, in my opinion, a very cutting edge product. So we liked it. We liked the valuation we made in equity investment. And as you point out, about a week ago or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, and this is one of our press releases that investors could find at cannaroyalty.com, Resolve ended up going ahead and raising $5.5 million at a plus $25 million post-money valuation, which ended up being a very significant return for us versus where we made our investment. So that is more than a $7 million value on our balance sheet at this point because of their financing. We participated to a very minimal extent on that financing, but currently we own 27% of Resolve. And
beautiful. So you did maintain a good equity component.
That's right.
27.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. So that would be another example of the type of assets that are in our portfolio. And just finishing that up, as you pointed out earlier, we also have a number of convertible loans to companies that will end up converting into very nice strategic equity positions for us.
Awesome. Well, again, Mr. Marc Lustig, I really appreciate it. It is Easter weekend, so appreciate you taking time away from the family to do the interview with me. Again, cannaroyalty.com is where you can find the investor presentation. You do trade on the CSE as ticker CRZ, or CRZ, I should say, as well as the OTCQB, CNNRF, and I really look forward to catching up on another update with you.
Anytime. Thanks a lot, Braden.
Awesome. Thanks, Marc. Take care.